Media.
The time is just gone 8 minutes to 10 a.m. as we head towards closure of this morning's edition of News and Views. And we are now going to be talking with the daughter of the late Imam Abdullah Haron, rahimahullah, Fatiema Haron-Masoet. And this comes against the announcement and the request made by the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, on the reopening of the inquest into the death of the respected and honorable Imam Abdullah Haron. Fatiema Haron-Masoet, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Jummah to you and to your listeners.
Yes, wonderfully able to join us now, Sister Fatima. Before we talk about the request from the Minister of Justice, on Wednesday night, I had a show with a Palestinian doctor, a specialist actually, and one name that he kept on mentioning when we spoke about Palestine and the support for Palestine, and he named none other than your father. He named the late Imam Abdullah Haron, rahimahullah, as a stalwart, as a beacon who stood up speaking out against oppression and injustice. So, after all these years, after the 27th of September 1969, people still remember him.
Yeah. Subhanallah, what can I say? It warms my heart to think that after what's almost 53 years, people are still warming up towards my father's legacy and people are still remembering him. I just need to, just for the context of your listeners, for those that maybe slipped the mind or can't remember, but in terms of his background, that he was my father, the late Imam Abdullah Haron, was a religious leader from Clermont. He was Imam at the Al Jamia Sheikh Madra's Masjid. He became Imam at a very young age of 30 years old. Now, putting onto this context, he was very passionate about human rights. He was very passionate about fighting for justice across the religious barrier. It's very important that your listeners need to understand this context. He didn't just fight for his Muslim community. His fight was for the humanitarian fight, and that is for justice, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and freedom to study and just to be a human being. So, with that backdrop, he also moved into the black townships in Cape Town, like Langa, Guguletu, and Ayanga. And in the same breath, I want to also inform your listeners, although he was an imam, he worked for a company called Round Trees, and he had a path which enabled him to go into the townships, and that is where he was not to make sure that the Africans become Muslims, but to give them the dignity. What he did was he was also able to travel overseas, and that is where he was able to connect with the Prisoners Fund from London and from the Middle East, so that they were able to give him money. He brings us back into the country, and that was where he was able to help the prisoners. That was the African people who was languishing in the prison, helping their families to get on in life, basic food, basic necessity, just to give them the dignity. That is what my father's role was in bringing about change. Besides making everybody politically aware, he was a political activism, making people aware, generally the Muslims in the community, in our community, that what was happening in the township. He wanted a Muslims to play a fundamental role in helping to bring about change. Again, here, it was not just about change, about trying to indoctrinate the Africans to become Muslims. No, it was a change for the freedom of movement and expression. I mean, my father worked with members from the PSC, the Unity Movement, the Teachers League. I just want to give you a broad spectrum. He also met with the late Chief Albert Lusuli and the late Robert Subukwe. I mean, these are the kind of people my father associated himself with to gain access to information so that he's able to help and empower others. I mean, my father was greatly moved by the impact of the Group Editors Act The Sharpeville and the Langa massacres, the banning of political organizations, and the imprisonment of all the leaders. And from his pulpit, he empowered the youth. He initiated as the leader in the masjid that the youth must become vocal. They must have a voice. He gave voice to the voiceless, especially in the townships. He made sure he did that. He tried to mobilize through racial sports, through community activism, through religious and political lines against apartheid government. He entered into an international arena. I need to, inform your listeners as well. He partnered with the late Canon Collins. I don't know if people are aware that there's a Canon Collins Bursary Trust or fund that's still running in South Africa, and that directly got involved in supporting the families of the anti-apartheid prisoners. Now, I'm going to move to the inquest of 1970. So when my father was killed on the 27th of September, there was an inquest that was reopened on the 18th of February of 1970 into the killing of my father. And the judge or the magistrate at that time ruled, listen carefully, the magistrate ruled that no one can be held responsible for his death. That was on the 18th of February of 1970. So I need to fast track to where we are today. 53 is waiting. We tell ourselves, is it a little bit too late? But we need to have hope. We always speak about in the Quran, from great difficulty come ease, or from ease will come, either way we take it. We need to understand the concept as Muslims. I mean, we find ourselves today, when we heard the news early in the week, we had to grapple, myself and my brother, it's like 53 years later. In 2019, on the 50th anniversary, on the day of my father's burial, not death, burial, my mother died. Imagine that, on the 50th anniversary of my father's death, but on the day he was buried, on the 29th of September, she died. Sadly for me, she will not witness, or she's not aware now, what had now taken place. But we need to be positive. We need to, we welcome this decision from the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. We welcome the decision. We commit ourselves as a family that we will work together with the National Prosecuting Authority to uncover the truth behind our father's killing. It's going to be, Brother Inayat, it's going to be a difficult road for us because I've already visualized, sitting in the High Court, listening to the story unfolding, especially of the 123 days when he was incarcerated, especially when he was tortured. I've got mixed feelings of, I don't know. All I can do is put our trust in Allah that, the moment we hear when they unpack and uncover and they start, dissecting each and every day all his torture, it's going to have a great impact on us. But we have to have hope. One thing is we have to have hope for the future of our country. We stand tall on the shoulders of all those that have died in the apartheid regime. We stand tall on the shoulders of our father. We have to carry the torch. We have to carry the remembrance and the memory and the commemoration. We have the responsibility. If I say we, I'm talking about myself. That the future youth of our country, when they do research, when they want to find out what happened to the stalwarts of those that fought against the apartheid government, what happened to them, then they will have the facts. They will have the truth uncovered. They're not going to have a fairy told story or fairy tale told story to them. They're going to have it on paper. As hard as it is going to be for us as a family to go through this process, we have to do it. So it will help to bring some kind of closure. Brother Inayat, but perpetrators are no longer walking on the soil of South Africa. They no longer will be raised. So I've been questioned already now in the week. So who are they going to prosecute if the perpetrators are no longer living? So I said to the person, as hard, it's a very complicated question that you're asking me, but it's a real question. And for us, we need to have this taken to trial or in a high court. Again, I emphasize for the future of our country, so that the story can be told. The story must be told because, Brother Inai, my father was the only imam during the 1950s and 60s that stood up against the apartheid regime. The story must be told with great urgency so that we can make sure that we can build an, a sustainable society, a society with dignity. I mean, my father had moral and ethical values. He believed, he believed in no corruption, and so many others, like the people that I've mentioned that he associated himself with, no corruption. He believed in people's dignity. He believed in people's right to education. My father was a firm believer in education. He believed every woman and man or young girl or young boy must be educated. They need to be educated to be empowered. So through empowerment, it will give them the right to live a life with a conscience of dignity. And for me, if anything comes out of this case that's going to go to the High Court, or this inquest that's going to be going to the High Court, I just want lessons to be drawn from it. That we don't want history to repeat itself. We don't want it. But currently in our country, sadly, there is so much corruption from the very top. And, our leaders back in time, I would say, they were leaders. They had, again, I'm repeating myself, they were moral, they were ethical, they believed in set of principles and values. They believed if there's a right and there's a wrong. That is what they truly believed in. And my father was prepared to give up his life, not only for his family, but for the entire nation. And
Well,
he
he
did
certainly, Sister Fatima, he certainly has paid a huge price, and you as a family have paid a huge price as well. And I'm sure, it has impacted quite a bit on the family. And I'm just trying to establish you were pretty young at that point in time. But I
that.
fully concur with you with regard to the inquest. It is going to be a process. It may even be painful. I have covered the inquest of the late Ahmed Timor over and over again with the family members. So I understand where you are coming from, because this was a similar experience that the family of Ahmed Timor had experienced during the time of the inquest. But at the end of the day, the truth must be told. And as
So,
the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, has said, we must do all so that we can ensure that justice prevails no matter how long it takes.
yes. Brother Inayat, again, I want to say shukran to media and to your listeners for supporting justice, no matter on what level it is. And by the fact that the Palestinian brother that you said that, for me, it's still hair raising to think that even the Palestinian brother, the story is not told nationally, it's told internationally, that people can still, um, they can, when they listen, when they hear about Imam Abdullah Haron, it's hair raising for them. They warm up, or something goes through their body. I mean, just yesterday, somebody walked in my home. They didn't know I was the daughter, but when they saw the picture, the man started to cry. What do I do? How do I express my feeling towards this person? And he said, I've never known the Imam. But from what I've read, the history and the book, and I watched the documentary, it is as if I knew him up close and personal. I mean,
Well, Sister Fatima,
it
unfortunately,
was coming down.
time has run out. We've just overrun on time. But what we will do is I will send you a clip of the Palestinian brother. It was a video recorded
Okay.
interview. So
I would
inshallah, we
appreciate
certainly
it.
will send that through to you so that you can listen to it firsthand in terms of what he had to say
Okay.
about your father. And also, I've seen a message come up on my screen talking about martyrdom and also the honor and the dignity which your father had received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what the brother is saying, yes, Sister Fatima, your father is a shaheed, and I agree with you.
Amen.
South Africa needs closure, inshallah. So, inshallah, we
Amen.
certainly will follow developments once the inquest open up and on a regular basis, as we
Amen.
have done in the case of Ahmed Timur. We definitely will provide our listeners, our viewers, with regular updates as well. But for now, shukran once again. We do appreciate you taking time out talking to us, Sister
Amen.
Fatima. Allah accept from you.
Amen.
Allah grant you strength. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you the ability to continue
Amen.
in your father's noble footsteps. He certainly has left a legacy, and he's
Amen.
left his footsteps in the sands of time. Alhamdulillah, Allah grant him the highest stages of Jannah. That is our dua.
Amen. Amen. Shukran.
Okay. I mean, and
Alaikum.
have a wonderful Jummah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Fatima Haron-Masoet, the daughter of Imam Abdullah Haron. And this is a development that we certainly will follow a lot more closely as and when the inquest starts taking place. And with that, I'm going to be signing off. We are running a bit late this morning, but for myself and the rest of the team, have yourself a great weekend, a wonderful Jummah, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.